There's a trend I've noticed in TV lately where basically every widely beloved show starts getting a weird amount of hate after 1 or 2 seasons. From Severance to Ted Lasso to The White Lotus. Part of this could be that they get overhyped and take the spotlight away from other lower budget, lower profile shows, especially around award season. Part of it could be a genuine dip in quality as the series goes on, but I do think that this is, at least in part, a recent cultural phenomenon. The rush to be the first to call something popular bad, followed by the bandwagon of commenters trying to call it more awful than the last commenter, whether it legitimately be bad, be mediocre, or actually legitimately be good TV or film. I hate this, I think it's so annoying, I understand it can be hard if you actually just have an unpopular opinion and nobody wants to hear you out, and obviously you are entitled to dislike whatever you want, but the weird glee people have about hating things is just weird. That negativity is as infectious as hype, if not more so, and in my opinion, it's ruining the experience of being a TV/film fan in online spaces. So having said that, and I don't know if this is a hot take in 2025, I think The Bear is a good television show. The Bear was critically acclaimed with huge hype when it first premiered in 2022. Prior to watching, my impression was that it was both about anxiety and anxiety-inducing in the people who watched it, and the only other thing I really knew about it was this image. Remember when this image was like the entire marketing behind the show? It was so widely talked about, and positively so, that of course I watched it. Season 2 came out the next year and was even more well-received, if that's possible. Then the following summer, we got Season 3, and at this point it's like my favorite show on TV, so I am seated. I binged the entire first season in one sitting the night that it dropped, and unfortunately, it was not as well received. It even got negative reviews, which was a far cry from the effusive praise that seasons 1 and 2 got. My immediate thoughts on season 3 were pretty defensive. I wanted the show to be so good, despite the name of my YouTube channel. I always root for art to be good, especially if it's a later installment of something I already like. So I was trying to focus on the good elements of season 3. The well-written episodes, the excellent directing, the impeccable acting, which definitely didn't go anywhere. But the season as a whole, I could not deny, just didn't hit like the others.
I read that article very carefully. I admit, initially I did bristle and dismiss it as the musings of some skoostimop millennial jagoff, no offense. But upon reflection and further rereading and the cigarette, I realized that there was a lot of truth in that article.
It's actually really interesting how the execution of season 3 mirrors the dysfunction that the restaurant The Bear was going through this season, and how reception to the season was similar to the review that the restaurant got at the end of the season.
The offerings were
substantially different on each visit.
Consistency seems to be the weak link here.
Disjointed, dissonant, messy, unmotivated, and vibe-wise, kinda fucked. Season 1 was chaotic and anxiety-producing, but with the exception of episode 7, which was basically like if you ran a marathon at the pace of a 100-meter dash, every episode had its moments of calm. And not just calm, but heart. It had a clear soul, it had lovable characters. You had time to see every side of Carmy as a protagonist. Season 2 expanded that depth beyond Carmy to show you a well-rounded cast of characters who each got their own satisfying mini-arcs, which all came to a head in the masterclass Season 2 finale.
I think I see the pattern.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. Okay, Richie. Drive.
Okay, guys, we're gonna refire.
In comparison, Season 3 felt at times as chaotic as Season 1, but in a way that was more hostile than engaging. It lost sight of the heart of the show, which wasn't the concept of restaurants or dining or the Chicago food scene, but these characters and their pasts with each other. The main characters were all in such stressful positions that they felt isolated from each other. There were fewer opportunities for them to discuss anything other than work and genuinely bond. There were rare exceptions to this, but they mostly came in episodes focused on one single main character, such as the Tina-focused flashback episode Napkins, or the episode Ice Chips, in which Natalie gives birth and reconnects with her mother. Notably absent from both of these episodes was Carmen. The only other episode with a slower pace was the premiere, which did star Carmen, but almost entirely via flashbacks with limited dialogue. It was a great first episode and explained a lot about his character, but for most of the rest of the season, Carmy switched between lashing out at everyone around him and cutting them out of his thinking completely, especially, and most hurtfully, Sydney. I'll get into their relationship later, but Season 3 was definitely those two characters at their most strained. The season was a rough patch for Carmy and for the restaurant, and therefore everyone else working with Carmy in the restaurant, and therefore the audience watching them. Most characters were feeling bad the entire time. It culminated in a finale in which the two main characters had emotional breakdowns, and its final note was Carmy reading the negative review of the restaurant. It just felt bad to watch. It wasn't exciting like season 1 or cathartic like season 2. It was exhausting. So a lot of the criticisms of season 3 and attempts to understand where it went wrong focused in on the idea that the show got too full of itself, that it was trying too hard to be artistic and pander to the food and dining industry in a way that made it sometimes feel like a parody of its older self. On my second watch, at times this came through, but I think it's part of a wider problem, which was the show just trying to do so much that it lost sight of the heart. And despite all the plot lines it explored, paradoxically, the whole season felt like it covered very little ground. To summarize, season 3 had a lot of good stuff in it. I wouldn't call it a bad season of TV generally. I mean, compared to most TV seasons, it was a masterclass of filmmaking, and I actually enjoyed my rewatch a lot more than I thought I would. But I would call it weak from a writing standpoint, and certainly a disappointment from the previous seasons. Still, if you thought the whole show was a wash because one season wasn't as good as the first two, and you're using a couple mid to lately negative headlines as an excuse to clown on a show just because it's not your cup of tea, I think that's a lame move. Thank God this is the one show on TV right now that can keep an actual pace, and FX decided it was worth another shot because only a year later we got season 4. And season 4 seemed to remember the show's heart. Sadly, it also kind of spelt the end of the entire series. I want to spend most of this video talking about that, how season 4 made up for the lost time of season 3, how it handles Carmy's character, and what I predict it's setting up for season 5. I'm going to be diving into spoilers right away, so please don't watch if you haven't seen the show or this season and you want to. For starters, and most simply, season 4 fixed the pacing issue. Yes, it has a good balance of slower episodes and more exciting ones. Individual episodes have moments of reflection and quiet conversations between various characters. Every character has a distinct arc that is developed evenly over the season, and pretty much all dangling threads are resolved by the end. But, in addition to this, there is also an internal, pretty literal force controlling the pacing. In the first episode, Jimmy and the computer set up a ticking clock, literally. The crew has about 2 months to get the restaurant out of the red, or else he is pulling the plug and selling the place. Ticking clocks have always been a motif in The Bear, a symbol of Carmy's anxiety and his existential dread that something awful is waiting for him right around the corner. In season 2, as we see other characters' perspectives on time, we explore a different idea, that every second counts. A phrase with double meanings. Yes, every second counts, so don't waste any time, but also, every second matters. It means something. It has value. Treasure the little moments for however long or short they last. The last shot of the entire season is the clock striking 0. But considering that we had already established at that point that the restaurant is in good shape, finally turning a profit with all expenses accounted for, getting great critical reviews, maybe even a Michelin star, what is the significance of showing the timer running out? What was it really counting down to? Let's come back to the countdown clock after we talk about our two main characters, Sydney and Carmy. Sydney is my favorite character, and I hope most people agree with me, although I'm also just obsessed with Ayo Edebiri, and I hope most people agree with me on that too. She's also revealed to be a great protagonist over this new season. There's a dream sequence at the opening of episode 8 that allows us to get into Sydney's head in a way that we've really only had for Carmy thus far this series. From my perspective, Sydney feels like she carries the burden of fixing everything and saving the restaurant. Everyone sees Carmy as the boss, yes, and that as executive chef, he gets the privilege of making big decisions. But Carmy is so flaky, more often than not, fixing his mistakes ends up being her responsibility. Not to mention the burden of managing his mood and outbursts. We see how this is getting to her through these season 4 dream sequences, but also through her worsening anxiety across seasons 3 and 4.
And of course, if your dish fails, it's no worry at all. No trouble, really. It'll just be a complete waste of space and a failure and disappointment to anybody who's devoted any time or energy to it.
The worst part is she can't express how much her anxiety and inner conflict is affecting her to anyone at the Bear because she's expected to be the rational one, the rock of the restaurant, the one that's independent from the Berzatto family drama and baggage. This is also why she could break down and cry and vent in front of Claire when her father was hospitalized, because Claire is not associated with the restaurant. With most of the responsibility but little of the credit or decision making, it's no wonder she considered Shapiro's offer to be CDC at his new restaurant. Obviously, we know she ended up turning down that offer after she attended Tiffany and Frank's wedding. Great episode, by the way. She feels fully integrated into the family and doesn't believe that excellence is worth walking away from all that. It's one of the many ways that she contrasts and is a great foil for Carmy. So by the end of the season, Sydney has committed fully to the restaurant and really come into her own as a chef and a leader. What if I suggested that Sydney moving into a lead protagonist role mirrors her role in the restaurant? As I said, Sydney is the rock of the restaurant, and Carmy is slowly coming around to taking her input more seriously and giving her more decision-making abilities. Almost like he's grooming her to run the place without him. Interesting, right? Well, let's talk about what Carmy was up to this season. So much can be said about Carmy's choice to leave and whether it's the right choice for him or for the restaurant, and whether one is the same as the other and whether one matters more than the other. It's the culmination of his journey across 4 seasons, arguably of most of his entire life. I'll start on the pragmatic level about whether it's right for the restaurant. I don't want to be mean by hammering this too hard, but Carmy is not like a good boss. In some ways he is. He supports his staff members' professional development, he wants them to excel and succeed, he's definitely a good guy. But he's also not a calm head under pressure. Like I said before, he can be flaky, he can be forgetful and irresponsible because he's so anxious he can't control his emotions well, and he takes out his negative feelings on everyone around him, including his staff. He's a great chef, but his lack of confidence can result in an overachieving mindset. See, creating an entirely new menu every single day, or spending way too much money on fancy ingredients. And micromanaging, ignoring the input of Sydney, who is literally his CDC, as well as Richie and all the other staff members who tell him that the communication in the restaurant is bad and menu changes are making everyone else's jobs harder. Also, let's not forget that the one time in the season 2 finale, the friends and family dinner, that the kitchen was running smoothly and on time was while Carmy was trapped in the walk-in, freaking out that they were messing it all up. The restaurant certainly couldn't have become what it was without Carmy, but he is his own worst enemy, which obviously means bad things for the restaurant when his anxiety and other worst impulses are getting the better of him. On a second, personal level, this is straightforwardly the only option left for Carmy to take. Walking away from being a chef is the uncomfortable truth that everything he has learned about himself has pointed towards. People make fun of how Carmy constantly apologizes and says he's gonna do better. Sometimes people call this repetitive writing or a lack of character development. But in the context of the end of season 4, I think at the very least it's been building towards something. Carmy is the kind of guy who really wants to be a good guy, but hasn't been willing to change anything about himself or let go of control. And there just comes a point where Carmy's had so many chances.
Todd, I'm sorry, all right? I screwed up. I know I screwed up. I don't know why.
Oh, great. Of course. Here it comes. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing shitty things and then feel bad about yourself like that makes it okay. You need to be better.
Sadly, he can't be trusted to do this job appropriately. He can't manage a kitchen without some level of toxicity, nor can he continue his mental health and personal improvement journeys while he's in this setting. You might think that this amounts to giving up, or saying that redemption or personal improvement is impossible, but that's not how I'd look at it. I'd think about restaurants for Carmy more similarly to an addiction, not in the sense that he's literally addicted to restaurants, but in that when you're recovering from an addiction, you have to identify triggers, and you have to identify and avoid situations and settings that will set you up for failure.
You can't curb that kind of chaos until the thinking changes. Until the foundations change. Instead of trying to fix everything, just remove myself from any situation that is or could become toxic.
I think after 4 seasons, it's pretty clear that Carmy can't trust himself in this setting anymore, and giving himself more and more chances is hurting him and the people around him. It would be great if this weren't the case, but wishing so doesn't make it so. This decision was not easy for him to come to. Season 1 focused mostly on the immediate fallout of Mikey's death and Carmy's grief and anxiety in the wake of it. He was so focused on survival and coping, he couldn't make such a big decision yet. But in Season 2, the idea of balancing a personal life with his work first comes up. And this is when we meet Claire. So Claire is a character a lot of people hate, and I won't get into all my personal feelings about her, but I do understand how weird she feels in the setting of the show. She's oddly flat when she's introduced, but that's because she's introduced as Carmy's love interest first, foremost, and almost entirely. She's more a symbol of Carmy's life outside the kitchen, which he could have if he let go of his obsession with excellence. She's also inextricably tied to his past and his childhood, so having a relationship with her means that he is healing his own relationship with his past, that something good could come out of his messed up background. It was clearly helping Carmy to have Claire in his life. He had someone he can open up to about his trauma and his family baggage with no judgment. He had someone that he loved and cared about other than the kitchen, and a much healthier kind of love at that. Unfortunately for Carmy, his anxiety gets the best of him yet again, and he self-sabotages this relationship. In the finale episode of Season 2, despite the fact that the night is going pretty well overall, little things start adding up. The chefs are bickering, the food is too slow, nobody can peel tape right, and of course, Carmy gets stuck in the walk-in when the door handle breaks. What does Carmy blame all of this on? Not on poor communication or high stress in the kitchen, not on the fact that it's their first night and the team is still working out the kinks, not on the fact that he has always been a poor leader while under stress. No, he blames it on him not devoting enough of his time to the restaurant because he was trying to juggle a relationship with Claire. He says no amount of good is worth how terrible this feels, in reference to him messing up. He'd rather work miserably, wholeheartedly devoted to a job that he doesn't even enjoy, than split his life between a healthy personal life, even a person that he loves, and his work, and risk taking his eye off the ball. Now, let's fast forward to the end of Season 3. At the funeral dinner for the restaurant Ever, Carmy sees David Fields, the executive chef at the restaurant Carmy most recently worked at before returning to Chicago, and the in-text representative of the most legendarily toxic and abusive chefs in the fine dining industry. When Carmy confronts Fields about the abuse he put him through, we see the perspective that Carmy has always been flirting with articulated. The idea that if you have zero personal life, zero time devoted to self-care, and zero regard for your own mental health, you will become the greatest chef you can be, and only through that.
My life stopped.
That's the point, right? You want her to be great. You want her to be excellent. So you got rid of all the bullshit and you concentrated and you got focused and you got great.
He says that his abuse of Carmy allowed him to not only gain skills, but confidence and leadership ability. Basically, the Fletcher from Whiplash argument.
You were an okay chef when you started with me. And you left an excellent chef. So you're welcome. Yeah, I gave you confidence and leadership and ability. It fucking worked.
Most people hear arguments like that and go, that's not worth it, and it doesn't justify abusing people, and they'd be right. But also, his thinking here is not even correct, and the second and third seasons proved that. In Season 3, Carmy did dedicate himself entirely to his job. He did tread all over his employees. He certainly did not take care of himself, and it made him into an obsessive, unhealthy tyrant whose kitchen ran best when he was trapped in a refrigerator. A kitchen is not just one chef, it's a team, it's a living organism, and a decisive, self-confident leader does not necessarily make a good one. In fact, it can make a mediocre leader worse. Additionally, talent and skill cannot sustain an entire restaurant alone. You need some basic common sense, and to be blunt, Carm has always lacked in that regard. Look back on how he got stuck in the walk-in in Season 2. Carmy is famously bad at picking up his phone, and there was a point where Carmy was about to call the fridge guy to fix the door until he sees an incoming call from Claire. He waits so long deciding between calling the fridge guy and answering Claire that something else distracts him and he ends up doing neither. This entire scene with the two phone calls goes to show that the choice between the restaurant and Claire is a false dichotomy. If he had answered the call then, Claire would have spoken to him before service, affirming his feelings and reminding him to take a second to breathe, and if he'd called the fridge guy, the door would have been fixed and he wouldn't have gotten locked in. Either of those things could have prevented the panic attack and mental breakdown that he has, leading to him breaking up with Claire and blowing up at Richie. As Carmy says to Sydney in the penultimate episode of Season 2, he shouldn't have to split his attention between other things and Sydney/the restaurant. But that's not because he should have to devote himself entirely to his job, it's because his attention doesn't need to be split. When you have your anxiety under control, you can be present in every moment and manage both a healthy personal life and a successful career. Carmy just didn't realize that that was possible yet. So confronted with this dumbass argument from Fields, Carmy does finally realize two things. One, how his approach to work-life balance has been bullshit, and two, how much he doesn't want to turn into Fields no matter how good of a chef he is. So Season 4 begins a new journey for Carm, where he actually takes self-improvement seriously. His new mindset also makes him more receptive to advice from people like Natalie. So when Natalie brings up the idea that maybe being a chef wasn't for him anymore, and that's okay, Carmy isn't defensive. He actually takes action right away, as if he was just waiting for that kind of permission. After he gets off the phone with Natalie, he goes right to Claire's home to apologize and insists that he actually loves her, in an effort to make things right and maybe salvage the relationship. After speaking to Claire, he calls Pete to update the partnership agreement and begin the process of walking away from the restaurant. Kind of a side note, I was shocked when rewatching Season 2's finale that there is a blink and you miss it moment where Carmy almost comes to this conclusion back then. While he's stuck in the walk-in, he says, "Maybe I'm just not built for this. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that just is." But unfortunately, at the time, he backtracks and decides that the thing he needs to do is dump Claire and double down on his devotion to his career. But after the experience of seasons 3 and the beginning of 4, he is finally ready to do the right thing. For himself, for the restaurant, and for everyone he cares about. Say what you will about season 3, but at the very least, we needed to see Carmy and the restaurant at their worst to understand why a big change was warranted, and Carmy needed to experience that to make such a difficult choice. As Lee says in the wedding episode, sometimes to break patterns, you have to break patterns. And on one final level, this choice is the thematic culmination of the entire show. What is The Bear about thematically? It's about anxiety and mental health, family and generational trauma, and grief and redemption. Carmy's choice to walk away from the restaurant, him actually pulling that trigger, matters more than anything he does from this point out. The fact that he is in the place where he could do that shows how far he's come. And it's honestly healing to see someone go through this journey and arrive at this point. He's choosing healing. He's choosing to do the difficult things of apologizing to Claire, opening up to people like Richie and Sydney, and listening to the apology from his mom. He's putting in the work, and he realizes he can't do that while stuck in the old setting that encouraged the worst impulses in him. Self-awareness, we love to see it. The finale of season 4, which consisted entirely of a conversation between Sydney and Carmy, later joined by Richie and Natalie, was also a major moment for the others and their arcs. Their different reactions to the news exposed so much about their characters. Sid is panicked and feeling abandoned, Richie is furious and feeling offended, and Sugar is mostly relieved for his sake and impressed by his emotional maturity. For Sydney, it's obvious and understandable why she feels this way. She's overwhelmed by the scale of the project that he's dumping on her, not to mention the stakes of it. Sure, she could do it without him, as he says and she agrees, but she doesn't want to. Unlike her past jobs, she wanted to have a partner in this that she could trust and rely on. And even though Carmy hasn't exactly been that person, she wants him to be. She wants him to continue trying to be that guy for her. It is rough to see the two of them yell at each other while Sydney is slowly beat down, eventually coming to the realization that nothing she says will convince him to stay. The emotionality only increases when Richie joins the scene. He is not overly shocked by the news, but he is furious and disappointed. It makes me wonder if he's drawing a connection between Carmy leaving all those years ago to pursue his career and him walking away now. Richie is clearly taking it personally. But despite the pain it ignites in him, Carmy's lack of ego in this scene allows him and Richie to have the conversation they'd been dancing around for 4 full seasons at this point, about Mikey. They discuss the burden Carmy placed on Richie by not being present for the immediate fallout of Mikey's death, and how he never took Richie's grief seriously since he never considered that to him, Mikey was also basically a brother. Richie admits that he felt like an outsider to the family because he wasn't blood related and felt insecure about his position in the family because, as he puts it, he's like the cousin. He also admits that he resented Carmy for taking his family for granted and for walking away all those years ago. With this moment, in addition to the writing in previous seasons, Richie's character feels concluded, all his facets finally addressed. And then Natalie comes out, and she doesn't even need to say a word. She hears what's going on, and she's so proud of Carmy. Natalie has always been the family member who took personal improvement and healing seriously, from attending support group meetings to listening to books about alcoholism in her car. And she's always, even back at the airport when she was sending Carmy off to New York, worried about him. She has gotten her life back together at this point through hard work and self-awareness, but Carmy's well-being is the one thing keeping her awake at night. So to hear that Carmy listened to her and that he's brave enough to make the right choice, that he's doing it calmly, knowing that his best days are ahead of him, she can finally rest. Really, the only person whose arc wasn't tied up with a neat bow was Sydney. She does still have confidence to grow and skills to hone. I mean, she only just decided to stay at the restaurant like 2 episodes earlier. And Carmy did take a choice about the future of the restaurant away from her. But from this point out, Sydney is basically free to become the person, the chef, and the protagonist she was always meant to be. She is the future of not just the restaurant, but the show. And that's why Carmy called Sid the bear. Sydney is the thing he has dreamed about for years, the chef he wishes he could be, the reason he loved his work. She is the only person who could turn the restaurant into the place he and his brother dreamed about all those years ago. And in addition to that, she is what the entire show has been building towards, the natural successor to Carmy. So what was that clock counting down to? What happened when the clock hit 0? The bear, as we know it, both the restaurant and the show, is done. And it was beautiful while it lasted. A mess, but a beautiful, special one. And now it's moving on to the next chapter. So to me, that clock was counting down Carmy's time at the bear. Now, I'm sure everyone watching that finale was probably thinking something along the lines of, what now? What does this mean for the remainder of the show? Well, that's why I kind of think of season 4 as the beginning of the end for The Bear, the show that is. Season 5 has to be the last season, that much is clear for me. I can't imagine it taking longer than one more season to wrap things up. Our characters are basically where they need to be now, except for Sydney and Carmy, who are certainly on the right track. As far as my predictions for season 5 go, we're definitely going to see Carmy help get the restaurant in a good place, but spend more and more of his time discovering his identity outside of the kitchen. I imagine this will feel weird at first, but remember, Carmy never chose cooking for himself to begin with. The entire reason Carmy went all in on being a chef is because he wanted to impress Mikey, but cooking has always been Mikey's thing. As for Carmy's next move, I think he might get into fashion and or art. That's a possibility. Those are the things that he actually liked. I'm also pretty confident he's going to get back with Claire. The first conversation with her didn't go well, but after the wedding, and especially after he finds her sweatshirt at his mom's house, it seems clear the show is going to continue to pursue the relationship between them. As for what will happen with Sydney, she's going to move into the executive chef role, and her role as a member of the Berzotto family will be solidified even more. Her main challenge will be to open up to those around her about the pressure she feels, the question being whether she will handle the monster that is anxiety better than Carmy did. I'm pretty confident she will, considering she's just better adjusted in general, but sometimes people outwardly managing their emotions so well leads to those around them missing signs that they're struggling, and can even place more pressure on the person to keep up appearances and hide their struggles even deeper. I hope she reaches out for help before it gets so bad she can't bring herself to, and I hope that she gets the success and recognition that she deserves. Marcus earned the best chef title, but I was a little shocked Sid didn't get it, and I think she and Carm were too. My vision goes something like this. Sydney is the executive chef and co-owner of The Bear, which has earned a Michelin star and is doing very well. Carmy is doing something else creative and is in a relationship with Claire while also maintaining a healthy bond with his mother, and the two of them, along with the rest of the restaurant family, are very close despite him not working there anymore. Also, I think Richie and Jess are gonna get together. I don't know, there were just too many scenes with those two. I'm investing in stocks on them early. So to summarize how I feel about The Bear as a show, yes, the first 2 seasons were better than the show is now or is likely ever to be. I mean, they were lightning in a bottle. It would be hard to maintain that forever. Yes, season 3 was a weak season of the show, even if it was still a highly entertaining season of TV overall, but certainly disappointing. Yet part of me wonders if we, the audience, needed to see the show go through that rough patch in order to understand what made season 4 so successful, i.e. how the restaurant and Carmy struggling with dysfunction causes the show to not gel anymore, and how them being in a better, healthier place leads to a more cohesive and pleasant viewing experience. And if they stick the landing with the 5th season, I'll still believe it was one of the best comedy drama series in a long time. Also, I like that Bob Odenkirk is in it.
We'll have to start over again. You're looking at me like I can never forget. It's not that I'm reaching in. In fact, it's the opposite. My reach is to sin. Plus, I'm really struggling with the words to say.
A lot of people criticize the casting choice for the extended Berzotto family, but I honestly like it. Christopher Storer has admitted that this was a very deliberate decision, that it's even distracting on purpose. I think this was a smart decision for the 7 Fishes or the wedding episodes because, one, on a logistical level, it makes it a lot easier to remember who a bunch of new characters are when they have faces you already recognize, and it makes you more likely to pay attention to the backstory or exposition coming out of their mouths. And 2, on an emotional level, I think he's right that it makes you feel like you're at a huge family gathering where you recognize faces but you can't remember who is related to who how. Plus, at this point, it's just kind of a running gag how the new Berzotto family members are going to be played by random A-listers, and I'm not above finding that funny.